Chumash and Rashi. New Torah portion. Mishpatim. There's lots of laws here. Laws that now that we came from Mount Sinai, getting a lot of laws. Mishpatim. Let's get right into it because we have a lot to do.
Amen.
Amen.
L'chaim, l'chaim. Okay. We are in chapter 21 of the book of Shmois, second book, Exodus, verse number 1. And these are the judgments that you should place before them. Rashi has a lot to say on this. Picks up on the words ve'ela, and these, and the word mishpatim, judgments. Whenever it says the word elu, which means these, it means these, not those. That's what it means, right?
Why are you saying judgment? Why not laws?
Because laws are very universal, general. Judgments are specific. So it's more specific is judgments, huh?
It doesn't have to be. You just follow the law, and that you don't have to be judged.
No, okay. Anyway, I just explained. So, law is all types of laws, right? And judgments are a specific type of law, and mishpatim is a specific type of law. So that's why. But translate it any way you want. Okay. Can we use the word mishpatim? then we can't go wrong, right? Okay, wherever it says the word elu, it means these are not those. Apostle Rishon rejects the previously stated statement. But when it says ve'ela, when it says and these, it means these and those. When it says and, it's adding on to the previous. So what does it mean over here in our context? Just as the previous ones were 10 commandments were said at Sinai, Sinai, likewise all the statements of this Torah portion are also from Sinai. Why are the laws of Mishpatim, which are judicial cases, by the way, that's why judgments, because they're about judgments of judicial cases. In other words, a plaintiff and a defendant, right? As opposed to laws of statutory laws that are like the red heifer. Those are not judicial, right? That's why it's translated. I translated it as judgment, right, as opposed to laws, because laws is a more general term, right? But either way, it's the concept over here, right? Shemata? Ken, ma'amarti achshav. I explained it. Right, so why is the judicial cases are juxtaposed to the preceding, which is the laws of by the altar, right? They dealt with the altar. Because this is alluding to us to tell us that the Sanhedrin, the High Court, has to be adjacent to the Beis Hamikdash. In other words, near the altar. Okay. Okay. Now Rashi goes further. We're going to have to do a lot of trucking over here. It's a lot of Chumash and Rashi. So we're going to do our best. You should place before them. What does it mean, place before them? So Rashi is going to give us three different explanations. Hashem said to Moshe, don't think, that should come up on your mind to think the following. I'll teach them a chapter of the law 2 or 3 times. Until it is set in order in their mouths according to its format. In other words, until they've memorized it. But I'm not going to trouble them to make them understand the reasons in the matter of the explanation. Right? In other words, you're going to be able to repeat it like an encyclopedia, right? You won't understand necessarily what's behind it, right? And you'll just be able to say the law, what the laws are, and so on, but not to have the understanding behind it, right? That's why the verse says that you have to place it before them. But you have to set a table before them, prepared to eat, before a person. What happens when you eat? You digest it. It becomes a part of you. So the same thing is teach them in a way that it becomes digestible. In other words, it's not just that they can, know by heart everything, but they have to understand the reasoning behind it. That makes it digestible, right? Like food.
That's what Moshe is going to do. He says he's
No, you have to follow over here, because everything we're going to do is a back and forth argument. So follow the back and forth, okay? You might think that all you have to do is teach them a few times so they can memorize it. No, memorizing is not enough. Why? What's the proof that memorizing is not enough? Because you have to place it before them, like a table that's set, right? A table that's set, it's placed before the person, that everything is there that they can partake in. So they have to be able to partake in everything. I added, Rashi didn't say this, but I added that it's food that becomes digested because it becomes a part of you, meaning you understand the reasoning behind it. I just added that part. Okay? Is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what we're going to have to do is be very careful, because we're going to get lost in the arguments over here. Everything is going to be a back and forth, Okay? So follow where he's going with the back and forth. And I'm sorry, I'm saying that from now, because it's going to be quick, because we got a lot to do. Okay, this is the biggest parsha with Rashi. Okay, next Rashi, Lifneihem. So that was one explanation of what it means to be before him. Rashi is going to give us another two over here. Lifneihem, before them, lo lifnei hagoyim, but not before non-Jews. Even if you know that a certain law, that non-Jewish judges judge it exactly as Jewish law does. Do not bring it to non-Jewish courts. Maybe the din of Yisrael, because when you bring legal judgments, legal judgments, it means over here, right? Civil cases we're talking about. We're not talking about red heifer. Obviously, red heifer you're not going to bring in front of them, but you're going to bring about a plaintiff and a defendant. That you might bring. Civil court. No, don't do it. Why? Mechal is a shame because you desecrate God's name. Miyak is a shame of Avodah, and you bring esteem to idolatry. To give it importance. Shenamar. As it says, for the rock, their God is not like our rock, our God, and yet our enemies judge us. When we willingly let our enemies judge us, their way does the This is giving testimony to the superiority of their deity. Okay, that was actually two explanations over here. There's a third one, but we won't go into that now because Rashi didn't do it. Okay, number 2. Kisikna. Interesting. The first law is about slaves. And just a reminder that we've learned this before. Slavery is a very great, compassionate thing that God does. That a person who's got literally doesn't own the shirt on their back, that they can sell themselves into slavery, so at least they have a roof over their head and food given to them daily. So it's actually a blessing that a person chooses to do it. In this instance over here. And we'll see the parameters of the law of it. Or later on, we learn when a person steals and they can't pay back, so then they're sold into slavery to pay back what they stole if they can't pay it back. Okay, verse number 2. When you will buy a Hebrew servant. So you have to be careful because you're reading in between the lines over here. I want to forewarn you. Okay, what you're reading in the book is giving you Rashi already. But Rashi's going to make it an argument back and forth. So don't be careful, that you're reading into what Rashi's already saying in the non-bold, right?
Right.
So and Rashi's going to go back and forth with an argument to see, because it could mean different possibilities of two ways that you can learn the verse. Okay? So just forewarned is forearmed. L'chaim. Okay. So when you will buy a Hebrew servant, so therefore don't come back to me and say anything. Okay? Don't do that. Just follow the yellow brick road, what Rashi is going to say. Okay? 6 years he shall work, and in the 7th year he will go free, chinam, without charge. Rashi in number 2, when you will buy a Hebrew servant. So what this means, Eved Ivri, is that a servant who is a Hebrew? Or perhaps that's incorrect, and the verse means to say only a slave belonging to a Hebrew. Right? Ki sikne, when you will buy Eved, is the Eved the Ivri, or are you the Ivri that's buying the Eved? Are you the Hebrew that's buying, right? Okay? Or perhaps it's only means a slave belonging to the Hebrew. Eved Kanani Shalachli Yisrael. And it's a Canaanite slave that we're talking about over here from an Israelite. In other words, I bought from another Israelite, being I'm a Hebrew, an Eved, a servant, but not a Jewish one. Or is this a Jewish servant that we're talking about? Right? That's the question. Olav hu omer, and about him, the Canaanite says, 6 years he will work. So then, if that's the case, right, because here it says 6 years he will work, only 6 years, and the 7th he goes out free, then how would I apply the verse when it says, and you shall bequeath them? Perhaps I may apply it to the one who was bought from a non-Jew. In other words, it wasn't the non-Jew that I bought from a Jew, but it was the non-Jew slave that I bought from a non-Jew. Maybe that's what it means, right? I told you it's going to be tricky over here, okay? But maybe the Canaanite slave, right? We're talking about Canaanite slave, right? Which means a non-Jewish slave, who was bought from an Israelite, he would go out at 6. But this is to teach us otherwise. In other words, what Rashi is proving over here, that's not speaking about a Canaanite slave, it's speaking about a Hebrew slave. How do we know? Because the Torah says, because the Torah says, when your brother, the Hebrew man, or the Hebrew woman will be sold to you, and he shall serve you for 6 years. And the 7th year they come out free. The verse only says be'achicha, right? Your brother. Who's your brother? It means a fellow Jew, right? So your brother, the fellow Jew, is the one who gets out in 6 years, right? I mean, after 6 years. So therefore, this verse is speaking about an Israelite slave, not a Canaanite slave. Okay? That's, again, only because of that one word. Otherwise, you could learn it maybe differently, right? As he just showed. Okay, Rashi continues, Kisikne. This is just to let you know that this Torah portion, and the yeshivas, they really go through this really well, because these verses are the basis of most of the Talmud that they learn in yeshiva. That the younger students will learn in yeshiva. These verses are the basis, and you see now how there's a Talmudic, argument going back and forth, right? Okay. Got it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go for it. Kisikne, when you will buy, miyad based in. So who's it talking? Who are you buying from? So is this talking about from the hand of the court? That he was sold in, I remember I told you, sold in his theft, right? As we learn that if the thief doesn't have how to pay back what they stole, right, then they get sold into slavery, right? That is something that we will learn later on, right? Or perhaps this verse is not talking about that. Or maybe this is speaking about a person who sold himself because of abject poverty. As I mentioned, he doesn't even own the shirt on his back, right? By the way, if he owns the shirt on his back, he can't sell himself. He can't sell himself, right? That's how abject poverty we're talking about, right? Then he's got permission to sell himself. Okay? Let's continue the argument. Let's continue the argument. We're clear so far? So which one are we talking about? But if the court sold him, he wouldn't go out by 6 years. So this argument is refuted. Why? Because later on in Leviticus it will say, when your brother was poverty stricken with you and he sold and be sold to you. So there we know clearly speaking about abject poverty, because there it says he is poor and your brother, and he sold himself to you. So then now what's it talking about here that I purchased? What's our verse talking about? Right? What does it mean you will buy? But Nimka B'Beisa means you bought it from the court. Got it? In other words, because abject poverty, we're going to learn that later in Vayikra. So therefore, what's this verse talking about? It's not redundant. So this is talking about that you bought him from Beis Din, from court of law. Who we're talking about? Someone who was sold because of theft. Okay? The Chavshi goes for freedom. L'chevis. Rashi just translates Chavshi, freedom. Okay.
Someone who sells himself because of poverty, he doesn't go to the court of law?
No. Well, why would he go to court? There's nothing, no court. There's no issue in court. Theft, there's an issue in court, right? It was taken to court, right?
Yes.
And the guy couldn't pay. Chaim, you wanted to say something? Sorry, you wanted to say something. I was in the middle. I didn't want to interrupt the thought. Oh, okay. All right. Gimel. 3. Im begapai yavai. If he comes, the gapai means alone. If he comes alone, begapa yetze, then he goes alone. In other words, not married, right? If he's not married, he leaves not married. Im bali shahu, but if he is the husband of a woman, yata ishta imai, then his wife shall go out with him. Okay, listen to this. It's really, again. Okay, if he comes alone, he wasn't married to a woman, right? At the time that he was sold into servitude. As uncle is translated by himself. Gape means in his coattail. In other words, he only came the way he is, Yechidi, alone. Right? With his clothing in the tail of his garments. Right? That's how he came. Right? In his coattails, that's it. Nothing more. So then he goes out alone. Magid, listen to what this says. That if he was married at the outset when he went into slavery, his master may not assign him a Canaanite slave from whom he will father slaves.
Who will father more?
So, interesting law.
So if he is caught stealing and he cannot pay, but he is married, so his wife goes into slavery with him?
We're going to see in a second. There's a whole problem there's a whole issue over here. Well, let's go to the next Rashi and we'll see. Excellent question. We'll see in the next Rashi, right? So there's an idea that a Canaanite slave could be given to the servant that he will then produce, right, for the master, other slaves. Okay? There is that concept. That's what he's talking about over here. Right?
So he gives him a Jewish wife?
No, Canaanite. A Canaanite.
So the Jewish slave has a Canaanite wife.
Yeah. I mean, maidservant. I don't know if it's called
Not a Jewish slave. Canaanite slave who was a slave to a Jew.
Right. So it's only if he's not married, then he can't do it. Then he can't do it. Only if he is married. Interesting. Okay. Remember that this is we're speaking biblically. Biblically, you could have more than one marriage, right?
Yes.
Right.
But what he's saying is that if he comes and he was not married,
Then he can't give him.
So his master gives him a
No,
wife.
he can't. No. We're talking about a Canaanite.
He cannot live with the wife and the children. He has
He
to
doesn't.
live by himself.
No. We're talking about someone who doesn't have a wife. The
He
first
doesn't
part
have
is
a wife when he goes in.
no. Yeah, it goes in meaning he wasn't married.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking. He wasn't married. Yeah. So he can't get a Canaanite slave.
But then he.
No.
his master gives him- It says
No.
here.
No. It says he
right
can't. He just says he if he was not married, right? Then his master may not give him a Canaanite slave woman. That's all. That's what it says simply. Read it again. Let's go to the next verse. Balisha, who, if he is a husband of a woman, Israelis, in other words, here that means he's married to a Jewish woman, right? Yotze ishta imay, his wife will go out with him. What does that mean? What does it mean that his wife goes out? Obviously, it's his wife. He can't keep her. But after he finishes his time, he's going to keep the wife. And what was that? What's it talking about? What does it mean? Rather, it means that when you buy a Hebrew servant, you are obligated to pay the food for the wife of the servant and his children. That answers your question, Chaim. You asked about what happens, right? So he has to pay. By the way, I just want to let you know that the Talmud says that when you buy a servant, right, it's like buying a master. Because look right here what you have to do. There's more. We'll see even more. You're really buying a master.
When he's married and he wants to stay with his master like that.
Yeah, we're gonna get there soon. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're gonna get there. Okay, verse number 4. Oh, now if his master will give him a woman, right? And she bears for him sons, or daughters. The woman and her children will be to the master, and he will go out by himself. Let's see Rashi. Number 4. He's going out alone. That it tells us if he was that he was not married. Oh, sorry, 1 second. That was 3. I'm sorry. Number 4. If a master will give him a woman, from here we see that the master has the right to give him a Canaanite slave woman to father slaves. But maybe it means an Israelite. In other words, like you said, he came in not married, and maybe the master can give him a wife that, right?
A non-Jew.
No, Israelis.
Oh,
No. He's
Israel.
He's playing both sides. He's asking the question: does it mean he's giving a Canaanite, or is he giving an Israelite wife? Right? That's where he's going back and forth. Right?
2 scenarios.
2 possibilities, exactly. All right, Talmud Loimar, but the verse said, that the woman and her children belong to the master. So obviously it's only speaking of a Canaanite slave woman. Why? Because a Hebrew maidservant, she goes out after 6 years also. Right? If she sold herself in abject poverty, she also goes out after, or the father sold her because he couldn't take care of her. Right? She goes out at 6. So there's no idea that it belongs to the master. So who does it belong to the master? It can only be speaking of a Canaanite slave. And even before 6, if she brings signs of puberty, she goes out. As it says, your brother, you're a Hebrew man and a Hebrew woman. That teaches, because they're juxtaposed one to the other, that the Hebrew maidservant, she also goes out at the end of 6 years. At the most, at the end of 6 years. I hope you caught that. If you didn't, you'll get it on the reruns.
But it begs the question, Rabbi, how could an Israeli, Bnei Israel, be married to a Canaanite, a non-Jew?
He's not married. He's not married to her. He's giving her, he's married, remember. We're talking about a married man, right?
With a Jewish woman.
With a Jewish woman.
Second,
Like a concubine, if you will, whatever term you want to use. It's not a marriage. It's not a marriage. The proof is that he doesn't take them home afterwards, right? He doesn't take them home afterwards, so it's not a marriage, right? Marriage means you take them home, right? Now, why all this law? I mean, the verse is telling it very clearly, and you see how Rashi's going back and forth, trying to, come up with what the meaning of these words are, right? But this is what the law is, Okay, verse number 5. And now, like Raphael said, if he says, Ha'eved, the servant, Ahavti es Adeni, I love my master, as Ishti, my wife, as Bonai, and my children, Layetze Chavshi, I don't want to go out free. 6 years came up, right? Now, after 6 years, finito. But he said, no, I love this situation. I want to stay, right? That's what he's saying, right? As Ishti, my wife, Ashivcha, this is the Canaanite slave woman, right?
It appears his ear, like his right ear.
Yeah.
Okay, verse number 6.
shouldn't the Torah favor a separation of Jew and non-Jew in this type of relationship, even if it's not marriage? It's a close. I don't know.
Good question, but we're not going to deal with it right now. It's a good question. I don't have a simple one-word answer, and it's not in the context of Chumash or Rashi anyways. But it's a good question. Can someone cancel that, please? It's not the... Thank you. Well, it was on milk? Okay, so, yeah. Okay. Verse number 6. V'gishay Adonai, and his master will bring him, El Elikim, to the judges. V'gishay El Adelis, and he'll be brought to the door, or El Mezuzah, or to the doorpost. V'ratza Adonai, and the master will bore a hole in his ear, b'martzeya, with a awl, and he will be a servant forever. Servant means forever for 50 years, meaning to the Yovel, to the Jubilee year.
Okay.
We'll see. We'll see.
Quickly share. I used to have 2 earrings. When I read that, I took them off right away.
Huh.
That was it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Nice.
Otherwise, you know what? He'd be serving us right now.
They wanted to serve us, but with the thing.
Yeah, but not.
I'm a free man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Free service.
It's interesting that I was inspired by this.
By this, yeah. Shkoyach. Okay, Rashi ve'elakim, to the judges based into a court. The master must consult with his seller, who sold it to him. The court of law. Remember, we're speaking here about who are we speaking about? We're speaking about the one who was sold because of theft. So it started off in court. You got to now go back to court after the 6 years, right, and consult with them. Ella to the doorpost. One might think on the basis of this verse of the doorpost is valid place upon which to bore the servant's ear. But the Torah teaches us otherwise, that you shall put the awl into his ear and into the door. Into the door, but not the doorpost. So then why did Torah tell us by the doorpost? This is to compare door to doorpost. Ma mezuzah mu'mad, so the doorpost is standing upright. Abdelis mu'mad, also the door in which your boring is done must be upright.
But he only can serve the cord if he wants to stay.
Yeah, he says.
If he doesn't want to stay,
Yeah, it says, the verse said, right? The previous verse said that I love my master, I love my wife and kids. I want to stay. Yeah.
yeah, but only in that case.
Only
he
in
has
that
to
case.
Go to court.
Yeah, only in that case, exactly.
Okay.
Only in that case. So you bring him to the door, upright, right? And he gets an earring.
What if you're a slave to your wife? Oh, okay, never mind.
It's not in Rashi.
So that you have to know that really you're a free man. Because it has to be a constant choice you make. Okay.
Eventually you go free.
Mara is in okay. Next Rashi. And the master shall bore through the ear. Hayimanis or Einayal small. Is it the right ear or the left ear? Right? Each one has a different meaning today. Right? So Rashi's asking, Torah teaches us that the word ear over here, and we have the word ear later on in Vayikra, when it's speaking about the Kohen. One second. And here says the master shall bore through his ear. By the Mitzvah. By the one who has skin disease of tsaras. It says the middle of the right ear of the one who is being purified. Just as before, or later rather, it says the right ear. Afkan Yiman is here too. This is one of the 13 principles on how we learn things out, right? In other words, it says here ear, it says there ear. There it says specifically what ear. So where we make the equation between the two. It's an equalizer, so to speak. So Rashi now goes, why is it the ear that should be bored? Like, why what are you doing there? Why are you making boring his ear? As opposed to any other, if you want to, to make a sign that he is a slave, so make a different sign. Why the ear? Why are you putting something there? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, so Rabbi Yochanan, the son of Zakkai, said, if this ear that heard Mount Sinai that you should not steal, and he went and stole, it should be bored. Right? In other words, you didn't listen. And concerning the one who sold himself in abject poverty, what's the reason for that? That's the ear that heard at Mount Sinai. That the children of Israel, they're my slaves. They're God's slaves. This guy went and got himself a different master. Bore his ear. Got it?
Yeah. So the servants do like a shout, right?
Right. In other words, you didn't get the message of Mount Sinai. That what? That you're a servant of God.
But the ear that I heard over on Mount Sinai.
That's right. Exactly. Rav Shimon ben Ayaderish Mikra Zekimin Chaimer. Rav Shimon, he continues. He explains the verse as a Kemin Chaimer, like a package of pearls, as follows. What's the difference between a door and a doorpost, unique from all of the other furnishings in your house, that they're involved in this commandment? God said, because the door and the doorpost, they were witnesses in Egypt. When I skipped over the lentil and the two doorposts of the Israelites, and they were saved, right? Because of the blood of the Paschal Lamb offering. And I said that that Israel, the Israelites, they're my slaves unto me. Avadehim, they're my slaves. V'lo yavadim la'avadim, but not slaves to slaves. And this one came and God himself, his own master. It's fitting that his ear should be bored in the presence of the door and the doorpost. Fascinating.
So it's a rebuke.
Well, that's for sure. Yeah. Next Rashi, he's a servant forever. Rashi says, no, that doesn't mean literally forever. But until the Jubilee year. Or maybe it means forever. Oh, yeah. Again, going back and forth here, right? Talmud Loimar, so the Torah teaches otherwise. It doesn't mean literally forever. That's a verse. It says in Leviticus, not here, but later on in Leviticus, it says that and he should return each man to his family. Therefore, 50 years is teaching us it's called forever. But it doesn't mean he's a slave for 50 years. Let me just finish the Rashi. But he works as a slave until the Jubilee year. Whether it's close by, or muflag, or whether it's far away.
So, but the Jubilee is in the context of a calendar.
That's what we just
not
said.
his personal. So what if the Jubilee is a year from now?
So then it gets out in a year from now.
To go...
It's out from a year from now. That's what Rashi just said. Exactly. Yeah.
But would you say that most of the
It's
time?
not helping him.
What does that mean?
He wants to stay. He doesn't want to go. So if it's happened like in a year or two,
I don't think Torah is coming to tell us about. Torah is telling God's wisdom. He's not telling what the person. This is what it is. This is your forever, right? Oh, you wanted more? Okay, too bad. Does it matter?
He has a wife and children there that he wants to stay with.
No.
Not
That's a
wife, he has
Canaanite.
whatever.
Canaanite. No, his wife and children will go with him out. That's not a question, right?
No, we're talking about Canaanite.
Yeah.
So he has to leave them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's painful.
Sorry, continue, please.
Hmm?
I wanted to ask concerning Olam. Does it usually mean forever? Because look, Brit Olam, the Torah is a Brit Olam.
Everything is based on context. Everything is based on context. Talking about a word, right? A word is a communication that is always to be understood not just as the word, but in the context of what you're talking about. Right? Very important to appreciate that. Especially the Hebrew language, or the biblical language, because it's a very small language. So, you can have one word can mean two opposite ideas based on context.
And the root of the word also.
Well, yeah, based on the root, of course. Exactly. Yeah? So anyways, but that's not in the context of, in any case, Chaim, that's not in the context of Chumash Rashi, that question. It's a good question, like why is it that way? But that would be not in Chumash Rashi, that would be based on other Meforshim that, would go into such a question, right? If the Torah is already telling, that, allowing your sentiment to be, voiced or, right? So then, it's 1 year. But that's clearly what the Torah is saying, right? According to what Rashi is explaining. Okay. Remember that this is actually, it's a very good question, but again, not in the context of Chumash or Rashi. It's in the context of understanding what Torah is coming to teach you over here. Okay, verse number 7. Whoa, is this some? Okay. Ki yimkar ish es bitay. Now listen to this. When a man, is going to sell his daughter Lama to be a Jewish father selling his daughter, right? is talking about to a maid, as a maidservant. Lo teitze kitzeis avadim. She will not go out like other slaves. Okay, let's see Rashi. Lots over here. When a man will sell his daughter as a maidservant, speaking about a daughter who's a minor, because it says bita, it says his daughter. Maybe she's 15 years old. Can he sell her? No. She's a minor. Minor means under 12. Okay? Well, let's see. I might think that the daughter produces signs of puberty, that the father has a right to sell her. But that's a mistake. But to prevent that mistake, not to make that error, we have what's called kal v'chomer, from a light to a heavy. So follow this argument. Now, if someone who was sold when she doesn't have signs of puberty, she goes out from bondage, from slavery, when she has signs of puberty, we will see in a few verses that she goes out without charge, there is no payment. And we understand it that it's speaking signs of puberty. So then, with regard to a daughter that has not been sold, who has not been sold before puberty, would it not be more? Would it not even be more correct to say that she should not be sold after puberty?
It's not a reference that for her to be virgin.
No.
She was with someone else like before.
No. Signs of puberty. The Rashi's question over here, because it says daughter, right? Does it mean a 15-year-old daughter or a 5-year-old daughter, right? So Rashi's saying it's speaking about a 5-year-old, not speaking about a 15-year-old. And he made the kal v'chomer, because if the one who was sold in as minor, when she gets signs of puberty, she goes out. Then if she goes out, then how would you be able to sell her if she already had the signs of puberty? Right? Kal v'chomer.
The man's obligation to marry her over.
We didn't get there yet. You're ahead of the times. We'll get there. Yeah,
But
we'll get there.
She has to be useful, le'ama. She cannot be too young. She has to be somewhat useful.
Let's see. I'm not certain. Not necessarily. No. Because there's a whole. What Raphael just said. We're getting ahead of ourselves. But Raphael said we're talking about a father who cannot feed his kid, right? Can't feed his kid. He's doing a favor to his kid to sell as a servant, because that way she will have what to eat. And it's with the understanding that when you buy this minor girl, that when she becomes of age, that she will marry either the master or the master's son. You'll see that's where we're going with this, okay? That's why it's a complete kindness that God is doing over here, giving you this opportunity that you can do this, right? We're talking about a father who cannot feed his daughter, right? So therefore, Torah is saying that this is what you can do, that she would be taken care of. And again, with the understanding, but we're going to see where I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, she should not go out like the release of slaves. Like that is not like the release of Canaanite slaves. They will go out free when they lose a tooth or an eye. But she will not go out when she loses a tooth or an eye. But she works for 6 years. Or until the Yovel year. Or until she produces signs of puberty. And whichever one comes first, she gets her freedom. Right? But if the master inflicted injury on her, right, and knocked out a tooth of hers, right, for example, right, or injured her eye, he has to pay her the value of what he did to compensate her. Or perhaps that's incorrect to say that, and only that when she goes out free, the release, like the release of servants, she goes out in 6 years, or by the Jubilee year. Maybe that's what it means. In other words, that she doesn't get compensation. Talmud Leimar, but the verse comes and tells us otherwise.
It's a question.
Right, he's asking, exactly. When your brother or Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman will be sold to you, right? So here the Torah is juxtaposing the Hebrew maidservant together with the male Hebrew servant with regard to all releasing from bondage. Ma ivri just Hebrew male servant goes out when he does 6 years or by the Jubilee year. So likewise, the Hebrew maidservant, she goes out free the completion of 6 years or through the coming of the Yovel, of the Jubilee year. So then what does it mean that she should not go out like free, like the release of slaves? That she should not go out if she was mutilated, if she was any mutilation, like the Canaanite slave. So one might think the Hebrew male servant does go out free by mutilation. The Torah comes and teaches us, Talmud Leimar, Ivriya, Ivriya, the Hebrew male servant or the Hebrew maid servant, Makish Ivri Levriya, juxtaposing the Hebrew male servant to the Hebrew maid servant. Just the Hebrew maid servant doesn't go out with the mutilation. Likewise, he doesn't go out with the mutilate. Whoa. Okay, that was very lengthy.
What if the slave have an accident while he's working for his master and he loses a teeth or an eye? That's not done by
No.
the...
No, it's
So
not.
still,
Yeah.
He doesn't leave. He just gets a
accident
compensation.
doesn't-
Here we just said.
when the
Here we said
master
you don't get, right. We just said now you don't go out, right?
No go out.
You don't go out.
No,
And that's
doesn't-
when he did
she
it.
doesn't go out.
He doesn't go out either, and that's the hekish that we make, right? That's the Gzeir Shava, the hekish that we make. But
he does go out, a slave, if his master
Only by
damages
6.
his eye or his tooth.
Only a Canaanite slave, only a Canaanite slave, not a Jewish slave, not a Jewish slave, only a Canaanite slave. By reminder, Canaanite slave is someone who has to keep Shabbos. By the way, they keep all the prohibitions. They're half Jewish, so to speak. If there's any concept of half Jewish, they're half Jewish, and when they go free, they become Jewish, completely Jewish.
Oh, they need compensation for like when if they have their period or something, then like they get free or like
They go, yeah, yes.
Can a Canaanite slave convert while he's with his master?
Only the conversion means going free. That's the convert. He has to be free. Other you can't be a slave and be. You can't be a
6
slave.
years. After
He doesn't
3
have 6 years.
He says,
He
I
doesn't.
love this religion.
Huh?
His
No,
master
he doesn't.
will
He doesn't.
prevent
He
him
doesn't
from
have 6
converting?
years as a Hebrew Hebrew servant, not a Canaanite, not a Canaanite.
So the Canaanite has no limits. Is that what you're saying?
He doesn't have a definitive limit. The master frees him, then he's free. Right?
No, I still don't understand. If a Canaanite, while he is a slave, after 2 years, he decides that he wants to.
He wants
the
to.
Yetzer Hara.
He wants to.
He wants to convert. He says, "I love this Jewish religion. I love Hashem. I want to convert."
So if the
He's not free. It's after 2 years, not 6 years.
there's no 6 years by the Canaanite. We learned that it was only speaking about a Hebrew slave, right? It's not a Canaanite slave. So the master, if he frees him, then he becomes Jewish.
And if he doesn't free him,
So then he's not. Not.
So he would prevent him from
He could.
becoming Jewish.
He could.
so the same thing for if like the woman gets like married
Not
to
fair.
the
Nothing's fair. This is God's world.
the Canaanite.
He wants to be Jewish.
Okay. So what's that? So therefore, we're talking about the law. We're talking about the law is, right? In most instances, probably the master would grant that, but it's granted by the master. It's not granted because he wants it, right? He's not. He's if he wasn't a servant, so that's a different story. Even someone who wants to become Jewish, right? They can't become Jewish. No one can become Jewish on their own, right? That's not fair. You have to go to a Beis Din and you have to adopt Judaism, right? So that's not fair. What do you mean? I could be whatever I want. You know what? Actually, better yet, I want to be a kangaroo. Well, like
Oh,
who?
today
What?
you could.
What? No,
Today
no.
you could.
To say that I want to be a woman, that's
be a
old
cat,
hat.
you can do
That's
whatever you
old
want.
hat. But to say that I want to be a kangaroo, that's new. That's new.
Really
And who? And it's not fair to say. Huh? Not fair to say.
What if the Kennedy?
All right, folks. I would love to continue. I can't believe it. We did maybe a quarter. How much did we do? One second. One sec. Yeah, we did like.
What if the Kennedy?
What?
Bears children like after?
We did a little more than a quarter, a third maybe.
What if she bears children when she gets like a husband?
Okay, see in a few
she,
moments.
and then she has to leave them also, or like
I'm sorry. What was that?
if the master gives him the master's son,